The infamous journey back home and the facing of the past that comes with it. This definitely seems to be a huge theme in a lot of the books that I have been reading lately. And what seems to be noticeable about all of this is that queer writers specifically always tackle this subject in a very unique way. Unique characters, unique storyline, and a unique end to it. Recently, I finished two very interesting queer novels. I finished Since I Laid My Burden Down, Brontez Purnell's debut novel, and Jonny Appleseed by Joshua Whitehead. If you're interested in hearing what I have to say about both of these novels, what I liked, what I found challenging, and how the theme of this journey back home plays a role in both of these novels, keep on watching. Make sure you press that thumbs up. Make sure you press that subscribe button if you haven't already. And make sure you drop something in the comment section below. What have you been reading lately? Have you read any novels that have covered this journey back home? I'm interested. I really like reading about this topic and reading books with this theme at the center. So just let me know and let's get right into this video. So, Since I Laid My Burden Down and Jonny Appleseed. Very unique novels, with one actually being by an indigenous queer author. But I think that I'll start with Since I Laid My Burden Down, kind of just switching back and forth between both of these novels. So, Since I Laid My Burden Down is Brontez Purnell's debut novel about a young man who returns back to his Alabama hometown after the death of his uncle. This, along with Jonny Appleseed's, really offers this unabashed look into family, love, sex, and the memories of two queer protagonists during their younger years. What's interesting about both of these is both of the main characters are oddballs in their community, and they primarily use their bodies to survive. Jonny Appleseed's two-spirit, Indigiqueer main character, Jonny, is a cyber sex worker who seems to know everything except how to love. And the main character in Since I Laid My Burden Down, Deshawn, seems to suffer from the same problem. They're very intelligent, very witty characters in both of these novels, but love is where they struggle the most. Since I Laid My Burden Down was interesting. It's one of those books that really does not completely satisfy. You're left just wanting more and more and more. It's Black, Southern, unfiltered, gay as hell, very, very sexual, while following this return to home theme. The main character in this novel's name is Deshawn, and he is a performance artist. He really has to confront a past full of loss, a past full of flings, abuse, and this constant search for escape throughout his life by any means necessary. I wouldn't necessarily call his life tragic, but it's definitely far from triumphant. Jonny Appleseed, on the other hand, is a mix of recollections from Johnny's life on the res, memories of his kokum, which means grandmother, and many nights getting blackout drunk. Jonny's story is honestly filled with everything that I find compelling in a novel. One thing that I loved about the main character, Jonny, is how endearing he was in his very, very honest character. There were so many regrets that he felt in the last few years of his grandmother's life when he was no longer speaking to her. And there is this one moment in this book where he has this revelation about how he never told his grandmother, "I love you," except for once. And it was when he was drunk. He also has this very complicated relationship with his stepfather, who he is returning home after the death of. Then there is an even more complicated relationship with a young man who he refuses to admit that he loves, while openly admitting that he loves in a very platonic way the young man's partner. But overall, what I really wanted Jonny in this novel to do is just choose love. And I think that that's always a wish that I have for characters, especially queer characters in novels I read. And ever since reading All About Love by Bell Hooks and just seeing how all of the ingredients that really go into loving and loving well, it's something that I notice so much more in novels. And I've just read that book last month. And so I just really wanted the main character to find love. I wanted the main character to be happy, and not even love being partnered, like a monogamous partnership, but just finding love somewhere, in a healthy way. And if you read it, let me know if you think that by the end, possibly there is a little bit of love that he does find. One of my critiques of this novel would really be that there are moments when I definitely did slip away from the text. There are a lot of flashbacks, and I did feel a little bit overwhelmed by the character's thought process sometimes and some of the memories that he was recalling. And so it definitely read a little bit heavy at times, and kind of, you're like, is this really necessary? And I think that that's a dilemma that a lot of authors, especially authors in their first novel, really face. That editing piece, sometimes adding too much in a way where it's kind of like unnecessary information. But even when I did slip away, I did feel like I needed to, I still was like drawn back in by the language and having such a compelling character like Jonny, where you literally have this character where all of their thoughts, you have to go back and you have to scan the text and scan the language and really ensure that you didn't miss an action or an important revelation that would completely change things. And so in all of this, Joshua Whitehead's gift is very evident, really in the building of such a dynamically human character. And some people really, I think a lot of people have problems, especially when it comes to like literary fiction, where it's kind of like they don't like characters that are so human because they find them boring, or they find their actions to be super ridiculous, or they feel like it's too real. And sometimes they want that happy ending. They want that character that is like perfect. And Jonny is definitely not perfect. Jonny is far from perfect. And that was one of the great things about Since I Laid My Burden Down, is that it was raw, it was unique, in a way that I think that all stories about the queer experience should be. And then at the end, the character does experience a breakthrough, but you don't get to know what happens next. And I desperately want to know what happens next in Deshawn's life. I think that Since I Laid My Burden Down, I definitely could relate to more. Jonny Appleseed made me feel so many different types of things, because it was filled with Indigenous language, it was filled with Indigenous song, it was filled with Indigenous culture. It definitely, amongst all of these issues that Jonny is facing, raises these issues that are deeply affecting the Indigenous community as a whole, like alcoholism, like the lack of access to resources. You see these characters in talking about the food that they have access to, and the stores that they have access to, and just financial resources, and of course facing racism. With Jonny Appleseed, Joshua Whitehead really shines a light on Indigenous life and the beauty and the pain and the will to, and this is straight from Jonny's mouth in this novel, the will to live and love in the holy hell of apocalyptic shitstorms. So I think that really sums up 2020 as a whole. And so I thoroughly enjoyed both of these novels, both Jonny Appleseed and Since I Laid My Burden Down. And I definitely would recommend checking these out. I got both of these from my local library, and I regret nothing taking the time to read them. So it's the holiday season, and I know things are pretty rough for a lot of people right now. You're dealing with grief, you're dealing with being in situations, especially for queer folks, being in situations where you may be stuck in some place that you do not want to be in, an unsafe environment, or for those that honestly just really wish that they could be with their friends, chosen family during this time. And so I just want to say that I see you, and I know things are rough right now, but always remember that, at least for me, you are loved.